Hey, look out. It's Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
There he is, the living legend, Joël Malm, one of our favorite guests. I mean that, Joel. He's
Yes.
author, pastor, speaker. And today's a big day because Connecting the Dots, his latest book is out, What God is Doing When Life Doesn't Make Sense. This is a blood, sweat, and tears book here. This is not something he just thought up after pizza. He's lived this thing. Joel, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thanks for having me on again.
You know what
Rick,
I'm
when you
about.
introduced him, you forgot once again to say he's a Texas resident. We have to say that every time because Texas is God's country.
That's right.
Even when it's 90 degrees, right, Joel?
That's right. Yeah.
Alive and well there in Kerrville, which is not too far from San Antonio. Now, I don't know my Texas geography, but how close or how far is San Antonio?
We are 1 hour from the airport. So we're about 45 minutes from the outskirts and 1 hour to the dead
Not
center
bad
there.
at all. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, how are you? Before we get into the book, how's everything else? I know you've had projects there in Kerrville with what you do. You bring people in, usually pastors, right, to get some rest and relaxation, etc. Plus, you travel quite a bit. You mentioned earlier you're going to Washington State and Alaska this year. Probably other places too. Sometimes you even go out of the country, don't you?
Yep. We got trips to Peru planned this year. I'm gonna be in Switzerland, France, Greece, a bunch of different trips. So yeah.
I want to go on those.
Come on.
Last.
Yeah, well, I could probably get you. I know a guy. I could probably get you on that Peru trip if you want. Yeah. So.
Yeah, we've been to Switzerland. It was beautiful. Loved it.
Unbelievable. Yeah, last year was a wild year, guys. And I found out I had melanoma.
Right.
And I believe the Lord miraculously healed me of that because when I went in for the surgery, they couldn't find it.
Awesome.
So it was an amazing story. It's just a whole new perspective on life when you got something in your body that'll kill you.
Yeah.
You just start to see things very differently. And it was, I'm in a weird way, I'm grateful for it, which is kind of interesting because that's kind of what this book is about. It's literally about when you look back on the stuff God allowed into your life, you're going to go, wow, well, he really knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
So,
but at the time that you're going through it, it's like, God, what are you doing to me here?
Man, hearing the C word is jolting. It's very jolting.
Yeah.
So, but it was crazy because last year, like some of the most amazing trips of my life, I got to go to Patagonia for the first time. Got to go to the Azores Islands for the first time. But then right in the middle of that, getting cut open, pretty panic-filled 2 months. So it's been a wild ride this last year, and I'm hoping this year is a lot less eventful.
Yes. Yeah. We're with you there. Joël Malm, we love talking to him. An amazing man, connecting the dots, what God is doing when life doesn't make sense. Joel, we want to talk about what the book is all about. It's to help people. But at what point did you sit down and go, wait a minute, I see God really connecting the dots here. What I thought was confusion and mishaps and maybe oopses, you saw the connection. At what point did you see that?
Well, people ask me how long it took me to write the book, and I'm like, well, about 45 years. I just turned 45 last week. So it's one of those things where Soren Kierkegaard says life is lived forward, but can only be understood looking backward. And we had this weird season a few years ago where we moved to Mexico, and basically I destroyed a ministry. I don't put it on my resume. And what I've found is people usually, every one of us, if we were to talk, we've got a season of our life where, like, when you're filling out the resume, you leave off that year or two.
Oh, yeah.
And people are like, what happened there? Let's not bring that up. Let's move along. Or maybe there's a relationship that you had with, and you're like, what was I thinking? And you're like, you're trying to, there's a joke I tell about a guy that walked out his front door and he sees a little snail on the ground. He picks it up and pitches it across the yard. A year later, that same guy hears a knock on his door and he opens the door, but there's nobody there. And he looks down, there's a little snail that looks up and goes, what was that all about? I think we've all been that snail, and God, like, we feel like God was the guy at the door, and you're like, God, like, I was doing my best to serve you. I was trying to obey. I thought I heard your voice. And I feel like it took me a year to crawl back to where I started from. What felt like a setback. Well, I've found in my life, most of the time, the seasons that I'd rather leave off the resume, those were literally the deepest, most profound seasons of growth in my life. And they are horrible in the middle of them.
Yeah.
But on the other side, I'm seeing it. So one of the things and the story in the book, I talk about experience in Mexico. One of the things when we lived in Mexico, we lived right on the ocean, and everything just rotted all the time. And I remember when we got there, I called a guy. I was like, "Who do I call to fix these things?" And the guy's like, "You got to fix them, buddy." I'm like, "I don't fix things. I'm a spiritual fixer, not a literal fixer." And I had to learn how to fix stuff. And now building this retreat center over the last few months, I realized I would have never had the confidence to undertake these things. When I'm down there learning how to fix stuff, I realized, most of the people that fix stuff aren't any smarter than me. They've just taken the time to learn how to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh yeah, I'll figure it out. A couple electrical jolts later, I figure it out. Right. But, and I realize now that was God building my confidence, making me stronger to be able to take on something I never thought I was capable of. And that's where I see it. But I've seen it in so many areas of my life, and so many people I've seen that have this real sense of mission and destiny and purpose. It all started out of one of the darkest seasons of their life. And God takes, well, we heard it said, their mess, and he turns it into a message. I like to say it this: he takes your survival story and turns it into somebody else's survival manual.
That's good. That's so good.
You talk about in the book about how, connecting the dots is helping you to find peace and confidence in what you're currently facing. So this past year, when you were going through that whole melanoma battle, were you able to find peace, or was it not quite so peaceful?
Here's the weird thing. I kind of knew it was coming, because in the book, I talk about this circular pattern to God's work. Psalm 23 says, "The Lord is my shepherd. He leads me in paths of righteousness." And that Hebrew word paths means paths made of circles. And in the book, I basically made this chart that basically shows kind of what I'm convinced is the pattern of God's work. Every season of life starts with a turning point. Something happens that changes your life. Maybe something you expected, maybe something you didn't expect. And then there's this courage that's required to step into it. Then there's a guide that shows up. Our guide is the Holy Spirit. Then there's this definitive decision you have to take to really lean into the season and get into the season and just totally commit. And then there's a series of challenges you face. And then there's a dark cave where, like, you think, they said, cheer up, things could get worse. So I cheered up and things got worse. Like, we all hit a season where like there's this dark cave, and you have to enter this dark cave and face off with the dragon, and usually the dragon's inside of you. And last year was so hard building that retreat center. I saw the challenges and I'm like, uh-oh. In fact, I remember telling my best friend, I'm like, I got a feeling it's going to get harder before it gets better. And when I got that diagnosis, here's the crazy thing. I had just dropped my daughter off at school a few weeks earlier, and I felt like I heard this voice. Was it the Lord, or I don't know, but I heard him say, "Just want to remind you, everything I send your way is a gift, ultimately." And I was like, "Oh, how sweet, Lord." Then 2 weeks later, this comes in, and that voice reminded me, everything's a gift. I'm like, all right, Lord, this is my dark cave. I want to make sure I come out of this, and I want to handle it well. And man, it didn't stop the tears and fear and the nights awake. But I knew, I was like, this is a test. And I've heard people say, well, God doesn't test you. I'm like, really? Like, talk to Job. Like,
yeah,
Job got a really crummy test. Like, he was doing what was right and still got tested. That's the basic thing. I kind of knew it was coming, which is weird. But that's the thing. My goal with this book is to help you see that a lot of the things you're going through right now are actually probably part of they're in the pattern of the way God works in our life. And ultimately, you're going to come out of it with glory, because he works all things, melanoma, sickness, the divorce, everything together for the good of those who love him, those who are called according to his purpose. He's going to accomplish his purpose in your life. He who began a good work in you will be faithful to bring it to completion. So if you're in the middle of this, maybe you're in the dark cave right now and you're going, there's no way we're getting out of this. Listen, it ain't over till it's over. And on the other side of it, you're going to walk out of there with a message and a mission. He's going to give you a message to share and a problem to solve that you're uniquely equipped to solve because you've been through the fray.
Good
so
stuff.
Good. Joël Malm, connecting the dots, what God is doing when life doesn't make sense. If I remember correctly, you were sitting down and doing the audio for this book the last time we talked to you, I think, or the time before. So this is not only in print, but it's in audio form, right?
You got it. Yeah, they let me record the audio. They told me how to slow down a little bit, but
yeah, we all have to do that. I think that's the direction I'm going to go. I'm going to go with the audio. Do you get some? Do you say a little extra on the audio, or is it word for word?
No, there's a producer that makes sure that you're saying it word for word.
Oh man.
So yeah.
We were hoping maybe there'd be a little, hey, Rick and Dan, while you're talking. But
yes.
not. Okay.
There was, but it got cut in post.
That's the next book.
Yes.
That's right.
That's when we go to where were we talking about? Not Patagonia. Where were you talking about going?
Switzerland.
Switzerland.
And,
Yeah.
Awesome. Joël Malm, pick up this book. If you don't have the time to read it, listen to it. It's on audio and print. joelmalm.com. You still doing the podcast with your dad, or have you been too busy?
No, we've been doing it. In fact, the last few episodes have actually been us unpacking each chapter of the book. I wanted to get my dad's feedback on the book, so he read it, and it's been kind of fun listening to him kind of give his take on the book. So that's what we go on through every chapter.
Awesome. I love that. And I've heard some of those podcasts. I need to go back and listen to these, the ones you're just talking about. But I've gone back, I forget, it was 6 months ago, 8 months ago, and was listening to a podcast. And I love the dynamic. The relationship you and your dad is not, it's deep. And it's a real relationship. It's I know your father's son, but it sounds like you're friends. And you're both on I love how it's give and take. Like your dad speaks and he's like, then you speak, and it kind of flows. It's conversational, and it's really, really practical, and it's good for you. So check it out. The podcast that I forgot what you call it though. What do you call it?
It's called the Malm Podcast. It was super original. Yeah.
A lot of thought went into that.
Yeah.
Way to go. Way to go. All right, Joel. Well, let's pick up with you in a few months to see what's going on. We'll catch up with you on the book. Folks are going to read it. Folks are going to listen to it. And it's going to touch their lives, no doubt. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.